This is the Final Word India Daily with Geoff Lemon and Adam Collins. We're in Melbourne. We didn't go to Sydney because if we went to Sydney, we wouldn't be allowed out of Sydney without quarantining for 2 weeks to get into any other state, and that would mean we couldn't go to Brisbane. So we made a call, and that was it. So we're wandering around various sites of Melbourne to record these podcasts. We're doing this one in the Royal Botanic Gardens, next to the Shrine of Remembrance, next to St Kilda Road, and we saw the start of the Sydney Test today. Adam, we got some play. You can stand in my shadow if you want,
I think
literally
so.
And figuratively. But just trying to get out of the sun. If you're looking at this in an audio medium, this is not going to help. But there was cricket today, and I would like you to summarise it for me in 30 seconds or less.
It'll be an easy day to summarise. Australia 2 for 166 at the close, winning a toss and batting. They lost all up 35 overs thanks to the quintessential Sydney rain. Pucovski, lovely on debut, made 62. Chancy, but still great day for Australian cricket. Marnus Labuschagne is beyond 50 himself at the close, and Steve Smith going very nicely for the first time this summer. Geoff.
Very nice, very nice. The only thing omitted was the return of little Davey Warner,
yes,
who came back from his groin strain. He still has some tendon pain, this is my understanding of it, and he did look like he was in a bit of pain out there when he had to run between the wickets quickly. Didn't look very comfortable doing so. Made 5 and then played a massive booming drive at Mohammad Siraj to give him a test wicket. Got a big nick outside the off stump and nicked it through to Cheteshwar Pujara, and it was a curious kind of return for Warner.
This was always the risk that he would look uncomfortable running between the wickets, which he did almost immediately. The first quick single they took, he was grimacing and he was out 4 overs later, a wild whoosh outside the off stump. Hasn't played a red ball game since his corresponding test match 12 months ago against New Zealand at Sydney. So, I mean, when you consider that he's injured and not played red ball cricket, and as he freely admitted, and we talked about on the weekly show, it's very rare that you see a player enter a test match declaring themselves unfit. But in any case, there'll be more scrutiny on that after the second innings, I suppose. And the pressure transferred to Pucovski. First time of asking in Test cricket, and looked solid from the outset. Heaps of time, great touch, soft hands, and sure, there were a couple of chances on 26 and 32. Both were dropped by Rishabh Pant, and I'm sure we'll come to that in greater depth. But the fact that they got him into the team at the expense of Travis Head, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and we were obviously worried about other elements of the Pucovski inclusion, but for a first effort at Test level, he looks the part.
He looked unworried by the short ball. He did get bounced, not excessively, but a bit, and he was pretty much a compulsive hook kind of player. He took on just about every short ball they bowled to him, ducked a few, but for the most part played, got a couple of top edges, scored some runs with it, some streaky, some less so, but it looked like that was his method, was take it on at all opportunities. Yeah,
certainly early on, and I felt that was more a function of his nerves than sort of a strategic effort to hook at everything. Missed one, I think he got a top edge on another. That's actually how he was dropped on 32, so the second time when Mohammad Siraj got above his left shoulder and he took it on, and it was dropped by Punt, who was running back with the flight and didn't collect it before hitting the turf. In fact, he missed it altogether. It hit the top of his glove and he nearly collected it on the rebound, but the third umpire ruled that not out, more to the point. And that wasn't long after he'd edged the drifted arm ball from Ashwin, which has been such a weapon for the Indian spinner so far in the series, collecting a couple of wickets, so close to a third today, but also Punt with the clumsy gloves. And I suppose before the series, Geoff, a lot was made of Riddiman Saha being the primary keeper. In other words, going with their best gloveman. And they reverted from that to a different path after one test when they were bowled out for 36. And Rishabh Pant was valuable in Melbourne. His 29 in Melbourne made sense. I mean, they look a better team with him in it as far as batting is concerned, but I'm sure that'll be a question we come back to time and time again with India, while Saha and Pant are both in contention.
Well, I noticed the number of times that Pant today took a ball from the spinners while standing on one leg, sort of moving, getting wrong-footed, or coming up too quickly, and most of the time he pouched the ball when he was taking it, but often would be standing on one foot doing it, and you think, well, can you really have much balance as a keeper when that's what you're doing? The one that he dropped from Ashwin, he was sort of snatching at it, went at it hard rather than sort of letting the ball come to him. And then the one that, the one from the quick went over the top of him, got the tips of the gloves, tipped it up, turned around and tried to catch it diving back. And I think that's one that's going to be talked about a lot because he claimed it. There was no part of him...
He kind of claimed it. I think he was talked into claiming it by Cheteshwar Pujara at first slip, who thought that he caught it. I think Punt was a bit sheepish on the way up. I was calling at the time, and I kind of went with Pant's initial response, which was he's unsure. I think he's dropped it. But
I
then
don't think he said to the umpire, "I'm not sure." Like there wasn't a signal from what I saw. He didn't kind of gesture to the umpire that I don't know about that one. He did seem to be saying, "Oh well, I'll claim it and they'll check it," and they did, and it pretty clearly bounced between. He was trying to bring his gloves together on it as it came down to the turf, and it landed on the ground as he closed his hands around it. So if he'd had another foot to fall, he might have caught it, but he caught it with the aid of the ground. And I don't know, I think people are going to smash him for it.
They might. I don't think they should, because you never really know. I think when you're coming down with you've got the gloves underneath. Well, sorry, sometimes you know, of course, sometimes you know, but I reckon he was genuinely unclear.
Yeah.
And it was Pujara who, I think, I'm not questioning Pujara's integrity either here, by the way. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because they do have the technology there for precisely that, and they arrived at the correct decision. But sort of stepping back from that one instance, I suppose it's how they're going to reconcile Punt and Saha, even indeed for the fourth Test match, given they're both here, and it's an inexact science. I'll have 3 goes at that. With this as well, I appreciate that the data from CricViz, for example, they say, well, don't worry about it. Play the better batsman when you've got a choice between the two. I also see Ian Chappell's perspective saying, why on earth would you consider sacrificing half chances? Like, let's call the first one a half chance to be generous to Pant, the one off Ashwin. They can make all the difference in a high-scoring Test match.
Yeah, and I think particularly in a situation where your best bowler is your spinner. In this case, you've got a relatively, you've got an extremely inexperienced bowling attack. We forget, I think, that this is Jasprit Bumrah's 17th Test match.
Yes.
He's never played in India. He's played at, 5-6 tours overseas. And it's not his go. He's not the guy who's played 60 or 70 tests. He seems senior because he's so good. But then alongside him, he's got a guy playing his second test and a guy on debut as his fast bowling colleague. So if your spinner in Ravichandran Ashwin is your best bowler, then maybe you have to give them the best possible support. I don't know. But then I guess you look at Rishabh Pant's 100 that he made last time he played at the SCG, and you think, well, why would you sacrifice that?
Yeah, it's going to continue to bounce back and forth in much the same way that I think we're going to continue to debate the Australian batting lineup. I mean, from Australia's perspective, what they really, really wanted was runs from Smith and runs from Labuschagne. The engine room. They put on 156 at Sydney last year, and that's the last time that Smith really looked in control at Test level. Of course, they didn't play at all last year, with the exception of that match and at Adelaide and Melbourne. So small sample size, but he looked at ease from the outset. He hadn't hit a boundary so far in this series, which I thought was kind of striking.
Not striking, as
it were. And he hit 5 of those in the space of 30 balls at the crease, and hit well down the ground, used his feet to Ashwin nicely, transferred pressure back onto Ashwin after he got on top of Australia early on. I think he conceded 7 runs from his first 5 overs and then maybe 40 runs from his next 5. So they found a way to tick the board over against the main weapon that India have got.
The CricViz guys summed up that it was the highest percentage of boundaries that Australia had taken off Ashwin, like as in out of the deliveries that he'd bowled. They'd hit more of them for 4 than they'd done facing him at any other time, which is interesting. Yeah,
and on the other side of that, Pucovski hit 7 threes today, and we got quite deep and dark in that, didn't we? 7 threes out of 62. If you had have hit 11 threes at some point, you need to get into players that have made 250 and above to have had 11 threes in an innings. Anyway, moot point, because he got himself out.
Love that.
And he kind of did not get himself out. It was a good delivery from Saini, but falling across himself. There'll be a lot of scrutiny on that, given that he did play that shot well, but that's his disposition. He does lean over, not too dissimilar to a young Ricky Ponting, actually. So when that comparison will prevail, but it was his downfall. He didn't review. I thought that was classy. He just knew he was out and
what I liked particularly
off.
Was that he walked. He was just starting to walk, and Marnus was like, "Hang on," and Pucovski just turned to him and said, "Plum," and kept going. So a
touch of class, old school.
He wasn't
young head, old school.
He wasn't Cameron Greened into taking the review just because someone else told him to.
No, that's right.
And I think it was Trent Copeland who said that. That method of dismissal, that's how they get him out. That's how they try to get him out in Shield cricket. He said that's always the go because he does move across and he was consistently going back to the spinners. He was always trying to play off the back foot and forcing a way through the offside. So they're things that might work on like what was a pretty docile batting pitch, but that may not be something that's sustainable in more difficult conditions.
The toss was super important. It's a slow track, considerably slower than it was here at Melbourne. last week, where it's a beautiful day, I should add, glorious weather here at Melbourne, at whatever time we're recording, about 7 p.m. It's still, you can still be playing cricket out here right now compared to all the rain interruptions we had today, and we'll probably have tomorrow and the day after at the SCG, but I digress. It was a really important toss to win. We know that over the last 10 years, Sydney is the highest scoring ground in Australia, and Australia will have the benefit of returning on day 2, where it tends to be the best day to bat there. 2 wickets down, Smith's set, and Labuschagne, who wasn't set early on, he put on 100 with Pucovski, but he was the junior partner in that stand as far as run scoring was concerned, and ease at the crease. And as soon as Smith arrived, he found his rhythm. And now the two of them together, well, they've put on 60 odd at the close, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's 160 or 260 at some point tomorrow.
Can I just say, this is going to be controversial, but I was kind of relieved that Will Pucovski didn't turn up, partly just because it would have been like such a massive story and it would have all been piled on top of him, and partly because you mentioned the 2 drop catches. He also should have run himself out when he was on about 40, when he tried to come back for a third run, came 3/4 of the way down, and somehow Bumrah on the boundary just didn't look at the middle and didn't realise that both the batsmen were at the same end. Just kind of casually underarmed the ball back instead of throwing it in. Should have run him out by half the pitch. And I don't know, like, I know this is something we disagree on, but I kind of figure if you should have been out 3 times before 40 and then everyone's celebrating your glorious 100, maybe it wasn't that good. I'd rather see him get 100 when he's really good.
Yeah, we disagree, because I think that giving chances is a part of cricket, and it's how you respond to that. And and look, he was batting really well after that second chance before getting out after tea. So had he made it to 100, we would have celebrated it anyway, and it would have been a great triumph for the system too. But I think it is anyway. The fact that he's a traditional product of that pathway, under 17s, under 19s, the talent identification program, the Sheffield Shield. Remember, this is not some modern player. He's very classical as far as the way he's set up to play Test cricket. He's not sort of blasting runs in the Big Bash on a Thursday, then turning out for Victoria in February and making hundreds at a run a ball or anything. He's doing it the old school way. And as Chris Rogers pointed out on our call today, the disparity between short form cricket, which he compared to a combination of sometimes golf and baseball, and Test cricket, has never been wider. And that's a thing we should enjoy and celebrate too, I should add. I'm not saying that everyone should fit into every hole, but the fact that Will comes from the first way of doing it is of interest to me, and it's going to be a fascinating career to track over the next few years.
I say this as someone who likes Test cricket. The combination of golf and baseball sounds like truly the most boring sport ever conceived. We're at the halfway mark. We're going to take a quick break and then come back for the Hall of Fame for today and to throw forward to day 2.
You can probably see I'm walking in circles trying to get the sun out of my eye if you're watching this YouTube video. We'll think about that more tomorrow if we're doing it this time of night.
Yeah, this is always going to be a problem.
That's okay.
All right. You primed?
I am. Do we want to go have a visit of the Eternal Flame during the second part? Let's do that.
All right. It's the final word, India Daily, the daily show that we do each day of the Test match. How many times can I say day? Let's see, day. It's day 1 of Sydney. The Hall of Fame today, what caught your eye? I mean, the Pucovski near run out was pretty good, with Bumrah running after it, falling over, thinking he hurt his ankle, and then with his back turned, just flicking the ball back to mid-wicket where Ravi Ashram was desperately going like, give me the ball, and couldn't get it in time. That was solid.
Yeah, the one I saw and immediately thought, Hall of Fame, Seabus Hall of Fame, Seabus Hall of Fame, was when Marnus Labuschagne put the bat handle through the grill and started tending to it with his mouth, which is not an orthodox way of dealing with your bat grip. It looked as though there was a bit sort of hanging over the top of the bat grip, as it were, and he was just trying to fold it back with his lips. I'm sorry, but I'm just reporting what I saw.
So what it was explained to me as you have to blow air in under the bat grip to move it down. And so that's what he was trying to do.
Okay.
Or at least that's what he told his parents when they walked in on him.
I'm just putting... well, I mean, it's an unorthodox way of getting the grip down. Yeah. I've seen the shuffle method where you get 2 hands and sort of just that'll help the momentum of getting it down. I've seen the knocking method around the edges. This won't work on the podcast, but it will on the YouTube video. The knocking it down like that. I've never seen the fellatio method, shall we call it. But that for me was Hall of Fame worthy.
Yeah, all right. Well, the other thing that I'd like to throw in, and this didn't happen at the cricket today, but it did happen today in America. We're big fans on the final word of cricketers nicknamed Tip. As in Reginald Tip Foster.
Yes.
Tip Snook, the former captain of South Africa. Now, you may or may not be familiar with your political history of the former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, in the United States.
A big personality.
Yep, and who was Speaker for 10 years during the Carter and Reagan administrations. During the storming of the Capitol today, one of the people who stormed the Capitol tried to steal a portrait of Tip O'Neill. And this gentleman was carrying a taser tucked into his belt, as was the style at the time. And he set off his own taser and tased himself in the balls so hard that he died. So a gentleman who tased himself in the balls to death while trying to steal a portrait of Tip O'Neill while trying to storm the Capitol building and institute a violent coup. I think that's Hall of Fame worthy. Yeah,
well, I guess by definition, he's only got just the tip left. So I suppose there's a link there between Marnus and the Tip O'Neill thief, or late thief, if you attempted thief, but thief. Well, look, given the day that's been in America, I mean, I find it hard to split them. Let's go with Tip, knowing that in all probability, Marnus will be back in the Hall of Fame at some point soon. Maybe
likely.
Even tomorrow. He's very Hall of Fame-esque, isn't he? He was in the anti-Hall of Fame last week.
Yeah, he'll give it another go. And tomorrow, you sort of have a feeling that maybe Smith's just going to come back and make shitloads, because that looks like a very good batting wicket as it's going to ease into the Test match.
I'd be surprised if Australia don't bat gigantic here. Saini's ball to Pucovski was an aberration. He was too short on the whole. Siraj bowled very nicely, but without a degree of luck. Bumrah's doing a lot of heavy lifting, as is Ashwin. Jadeja only used for 3 overs, which in itself's a point we brushed over earlier. I just feel like it's got the preconditions for Australia going huge tomorrow. Now they've laid this foundation.
All right. Well, it'll be on that first bit for them to try to squeeze something out, and then I suppose when the second new ball comes along, we'll be back to bring you all of the information about what did happen on the second day, rather than guessing what will happen.
And before we go, if we've said it a couple of times, but throughout the week we'll be in Melbourne, not Sydney, of course, and that'll mean we're shooting in all sorts of interesting places. So if you haven't yet transitioned from podcast to YouTube and you want to see what we look like, we had a couple of messages last week saying, "Oh, you don't look like a caricature quite so much." Well, maybe not anymore anyway. You can see us. Thanks to Cam Fink, who's just doing a spectacular job shooting us at the moment, and I'm sure this will be a beautiful video to visit on the Final Word YouTube page, which is very easy to find.
Yep, and if you want to support the show, patreon.com/thefinalword. Geoff Lemon, Adam Collins, India Daily. See you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.